You wrote a book,
Yeah.
a manifesto that outlines the progressive vision for America. So the big question, what are some defining ideas of progressivism?
Yes. So in order to do that, Lex, we got to talk about where we are in the political spectrum. And in fact, there's two different spectrums now. People often think of left, right, and that's true. That exists. But layered on top of that is now populist versus establishment. So I'm center left on the left right spectrum, but I'm all the way on the populist end of the second spectrum.
Mhm.
So where does progressivism lie within that? Well, I would argue that it's exactly in those places. It's populist, and it's on the left, but it is not far left. So far left is a different animal, and we could talk about that in a little bit. So in terms of what makes a progressive, so expand the circle of liberty and justice for all and equality of opportunity. Now, people will say, well, that seems pretty broad and all American, but is it? Think about it. So expand the circle of liberty. Everybody's in favor of that, right? No, absolutely not. So certainly the King of England was not in favor of expanding the circle of liberty, and the founding fathers said, we're going to expand it. And they expanded it to propertied white men. And then progressives have been, they're progressives because they expanded the circle of liberty. They then, from then on, as we were perfecting the union, progressives always say expand it further, include women, include people without property, include all races. And at every turn, conservatives fight against it. So that doesn't mean if you're a conservative today, you don't want to include women or minorities, et cetera. But today you would say, for example, well, I don't want to expand the circle of liberty to, for example, undocumented immigrants. And maybe you're right about that. And we could have that discussion in terms of a specific philosophy. And I don't believe that undocumented immigrants should immediately be citizens or anything along those lines. But I do believe in expanding liberty overall. And the contours of that are what's interesting. And then you say justice for all. Everybody's for justice. No, right now, marijuana possession is still illegal in a lot of parts of the country. Now, a lot of right wingers and left wingers agree that it should be legal. But for my entire lifetime, black people have been arrested at about 3.7 times the rate of white people. And the entire country has been fine with it. So is that justice? No, they smoke. White people, black people smoke marijuana at the same rate. Black people get arrested about 4 times the rate. That is an injustice that an enormous percentage of the country was comfortable with. Well, progressives aren't comfortable with it. We want justice for all. So the equality of opportunity is an interesting one because the far left will say, so at least some portions of them will say equality of results, right? So progressives just want a fair chance. So free college education, but afterwards you don't get to have exact same results as either the wealthiest person, or we're not all going to be equal. We don't have equal talents, skills, abilities, etc.
There's a lot of questions I can ask there. So on the circle of liberty, yes, so expanding the number of people whose freedoms are protected. But what about the magnitude of freedom for each individual person? So expanding the freedom of the individual and protecting the freedoms of the individual. It seems like progressives are more willing to expand the size of government, where government can do all kinds of regulation, all kinds of controls on the individual.
So, Lex, what we're probably going to talk about a lot today is balance. And so a lot of people think, oh, I'm on the right, I'm on the left. And that comes with a certain preset ideology. So the right is always correct, the left is always correct. So there's 2 problems with that. Number one, how could you possibly believe in a preset ideology if you're an independent thinker? It's literally, by definition, not possible. If you say, I lent my brain to an ideology that was created 80 years ago or 8 years ago or 800 years ago, and I'm not going to change it, you're saying, I don't think for myself. I bought into a culture. And by the way, there's a lot of different forms of culture you could buy into: religion, politics, sometimes racial, etc. So that's why you need actually balance. The second reason you need balance, other than independent thought, is because the answer is almost never black and white. And that gets into a really interesting nuance because mainstream media, in my opinion, is the matrix. and its job is to delude you into thinking corporate rule is great for you and we should never change it and the status quo is wonderful. So they have created a false middle. What mainstream media calls moderate is actually, in my opinion, extremist corporate ideology. So, for example, they'll say Joe Manchin is a moderate. None of his positions are moderate other than potentially gun control in West Virginia. He's not for gun control. The people of West Virginia are not for gun control, generally speaking. So, and he uses that. And they usually have these shiny objects where they're like, you see this? I'm a moderate because of guns. Or I'm a moderate because I'm a Democrat from West Virginia. But wait, let's look at your positions. You're against paid family leave. That polls at 84%. So you're a radical corporatist who say that women should be forced back into work the day after they have birth. You're against a higher minimum wage. You're for every corporate position, and they all poll at 33% or less. So Joe Manchin is not at all a moderate, and this applies to almost every corporate Republican and every corporate Democrat. They're all extremists in supporting what I call corporatism. So you have to get to a balance in order to get to the right answer.